key.
Storm Alex. To memory. It's history. It's yesterday's news. Tropical Storm Alex is no more. The last advisory has been issued on it. It's now just a blob of clouds, some showers and thunderstorms still attributable to it. And it could redevelop over time. And if it would redevelop over time, it would still have the name Alex. And what's interesting about this is the last advisory was issued, and it never was downgraded from a tropical storm to a depression because it dissipated so rapidly. So that's not bad news at all. We like news like that anywhere in the lower 48 states where we don't look forward to tropical storm formation. And it doesn't look like imminent tropical storm formation in the Atlantic Basin for the next 24 hours or so, but there's a couple of areas of suspect. First, let's take a look at Alex. This is Alex. Still has some thunderstorms firing with it this morning. It encountered an incredible amount of shear yesterday. Those are winds out of the south and southwest that sheared all of this apart as it moved across the Atlantic and then moved to the northeast of the Lesser Antilles here in the Leeward Islands. So it became no threat here. But it still is an area that could redevelop. So this is one area that we will continue to watch. Now, if one of these other areas does develop, not this one, because that would become Alex again, the next one would be Bonnie, and then Charlie, and then Danielle. We've got a lot of action out in the Atlantic right now, too, in different areas, and we have that, and we should have it. The graph says that that trend is upward dramatically in August, and as you can see by the maps, over the last 101 years, 49 storms. It's almost one every 2 years we've had a named storm, and that's anywhere from Africa across the Atlantic, the Gulf of Mexico, down the Western Caribbean, and off the East Coast. And off the East Coast, we've got a couple of things we're watching. First, just some showers and thunderstorms off the coast of Florida. We're not watching this for any kind of potential development. But we have an area here that has the potential over time to develop. It's not going to develop in the next 24 hours or so. It would have to fire some deep convection, get down to the surface, see a circulation there, but it is just an area of thunderstorms right now that is being watched for possible development. Meanwhile, the Gulf of Mexico, if you remember, we had an area of thunderstorms that was tracking across the Gulf and looked like there could be some potential development there. But those have dissipated, and they're very disorganized now, so tropical storm formation not likely in the near term for the Gulf of Mexico. Now, off the Carolina coastline, we have that area of thunderstorms, and there's a circulation to it, but it's a surface low pressure that is on a stalled out front. These generally have to become disassociated with the front and gain some circulation, deep convection, and then they can develop over time. And a couple of years ago, we had, I believe, at least one or two that developed out in the Atlantic off the Carolina coastline. So that's another area that bears watching and will continue to do so, as will the Tropical Prediction Center. Further out into the Atlantic, you remember a couple of days ago, kind of a broad area of circulation moved off Africa? Well, that has moved further now to the west, and it's about 1,000 miles to the east of the Lesser Antilles. And it's an area that could, if convection were to fire up, could develop into something. However, it's also going to enter very hostile waters out here, as Alex did. So we don't look for tropical storm formation there either in the near term. The latest wave to move off the coast has some pretty deep convection with it. No circulation evident from it. And that will begin its movement to the west. But this, not likely for tropical storm formation either. We still have a hurricane out there. It's Hurricane Estelle. Hurricane Estelle weakened overnight as it moved into some cooler water. Its center of circulation is at 18.8 north and 122.8 west, about 870 miles southwest of Cabo San Lucas, with winds 105 miles per hour moving west-northwest at 970 millibars. Still a hurricane, and we're going to be watching that over the next couple of days as it continues its track out into the Pacific. Severe weather today, likely in the same areas as was the potential for it yesterday. That's Nebraska and Kansas and western Missouri and western Iowa, right in this area. Elsewhere, scattered strong storms could be evident from Florida to the northern plains and the Carolina coast.
Fair skies grace the Northeast while thunderstorms brew in the upper Midwest. Find out what you can expect for your work week. Watch Weather Center next.
Is IAMS good for life? Well, research suggests cats can lower your blood pressure and help their owners live longer, healthier lives. In return, help your cat live a long, healthy life. The wholesome ingredients in IAMS are more digestible, so more nutrition stays in your cat, and cats love the taste. IAMS Cat Foods, good for life, from the IAMS Company.
Buy 12 cans of IAMS cat or dog food, now slow cooked with real broth, and pick up a free insulated mug with money-saving coupons inside.
Every day, more people are choosing Lowe's Home Improvement Warehouse, and here's why.
No one has more flooring options in stock. Wood floors or carpeting.
Lowe's has your floors covered.
It's time now for a storm watch. In the tropical Atlantic, Alex is gone, but in the Pacific, we have a powerhouse system on our hands. And here's Dr. Steve Lyons with the latest. Steve?
Well, thank you, Mark. Tropical update time, and Mark is right. We have Hurricane Estelle out there. Not a major factor for landfall at all, but it's going to produce and is producing some pretty good surf and swell along the coast of Baja and Southern California. We have a lot of little systems out in the Atlantic right now. Thank goodness you're not in Taiwan. Let's hope you're not if you're watching this, because they have a typhoon moving right at them, and I'll show you that in a second as well. We had, of course, Alex out here. It's since just become a low-pressure center and is meandering out here and not expected to redevelop at all. We're looking at a low-pressure center off the east coast of the United States that's been fairly persistent. Right now it's tied to a surface trough of low pressure, sort of a mid-latitude hybrid. We don't expect development from it, but it's going to hang around a little bit. We're also looking at this cluster of thunderstorms in the Gulf of Mexico. If that persists, that could be of interest there. Let's go to the Gulf first and see what we've got going. We had a cluster of thunderstorms up here last evening that moved to the southwest and dissipated. We have a very sharp trough of low pressure with westerly winds in here. We get into the August time frame, we have to watch out for those clusters and westerly winds in the Gulf. It's a relatively rare event. So if these thunderstorms persist, we may see a low-pressure center develop there. Right now, we don't expect that, but we'll keep an eye on it for you. The upper level flow over the top of it is not unfavorable for development. Now, in the Caribbean Sea, we see generally nice weather, but very, very fast trade winds out here, blowing 20 to 25 miles an hour, and they're slowing down right near the Central American coast and producing all this thunderstorm activity. Those are what we call straight line winds, and we don't expect any development from this the next 24 hours either. Now, as we go out into the Atlantic Ocean and off the eastern seaboard, we see sort of a conglomeration of a lot of cloud out here, and we're really looking at a low pressure center that's in this area. Let's zoom in there and let's look at it a little more closely. There we see it there. You can see the spin right in there. There's a little bit of a hook right there. That's where the low pressure center is. Most of the thunderstorms are blowing off to the north and east in a fairly brisk northeast winds out of the southwest blowing to the northeast. And that's not favorable for development. As long as we keep the center open and clear from thunderstorm activity, we don't expect development. But most of our models indicate that this low pressure center is going to hang around off the coast there for a few days. We'll have to watch it to see if any more favorable conditions materialize in the next 24 to 36 hours. Now, out in the central Atlantic, we had been watching a tropical wave out here that was a rather large one. So far, it's still a rather large one, but good thing nothing's happening to it. We have a big swirl in the cloud field here, you can see, but just a few isolated thunderstorms with it, and that's not expected to do too much the next couple of days. Without thunderstorms, it's very, very difficult to get any tropical development. You can see in the islands here this morning, just a beautiful day out there. We have some shower activity off to the south in our intertropical convergence zone. As we go all the way to Africa, we've seen another wave come off the African coast, and this one has had a rather persistent area of thunderstorm activity with it, but a rather small cluster, and we don't expect development out of that the next 24 hours. Now, we're on the time to ramp up. We're August 1 to 10, and notice the number of dots are increasing. The other thing you want to notice, too, is almost every place in the Atlantic Basin there's a possibility for tropical cyclone development. It's not always favorable for that, but we can see that the dots spread out. We've still got the Gulf of Mexico, and we've still got the eastern United States. So all of these areas are potentially areas where development can occur in August, and we should see the numbers of dots, in other words, the typical number of cyclone occurrences, to go up the following 10 days. So be prepared. It's been a little bit quiet so far this year, but that does not necessarily mean it's going to continue to be quiet. Now out in the Pacific, we have Hurricane Estelle, and as of 8 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, it was at 19.1 north, 124.1 west. That's about 820 miles southwest of Cabo San Lucas here. Still continues to move off to the west-northwest at about 14. Currently, the winds are about 90 miles per hour, so it's on the downslide. But swell from it, as it's been propagating out here, is affecting Southern California right now, and will continue to be increasing, and should peak out sometimes tomorrow afternoon. So surfers and boaters, beware. There could be some very high surf out there on the order of 10, in some locations 15 feet. And we can see a picture of that. Here it is here, weakening very quickly. And we don't expect anything out of it other than the swell. Stay tuned to the Weather Channel for all the latest information on weather.
It's headlights and hazy skies as showers put a damper on the upper Midwest. Will your day be dry or a washout? Find out on Weather Center after your local forecast.
For dry, red eyes, Clear Eyes is awesome. Unlike the other leading eye drop, it removes redness and has an ingredient.
We've had some reports of large hail from New Mexico to Kansas this afternoon in just the last hour. Also some locally heavy rain in the upper Midwest. We'll talk about that on Storm Watch after Steve Lyons gives us the tropical update. Steve?
Well, thanks, Mike. We've got quite a few fun things to talk about on the tropical update, and some that are a little not so fun, but let's take a look at it. The first fun thing is we don't have anything of real interest in the tropical Atlantic to worry about. The second thing is we do have something to worry about in the extreme western Pacific and a little bit to worry about in the eastern Pacific. But right now, here's our long loop of the tropical Atlantic, and you can see we had the remnants of our tropical storm out here that are pretty much dead. We have a weak low pressure center over here that's producing some thunderstorm activity, but of no real concern. Another little weak low pressure center off the coast of the east coast. We'll talk about that in a second. The Gulf of Mexico has had some flare-ups and thunderstorm activity, but not well organized at all. Well, let's zoom in first and see what we've got going on in the Gulf. We've looked at an area of thunderstorm activity here in the northeastern Gulf of Mexico earlier today. And what's happened, there's a surface trough of low pressure, but the area is expanding out toward the northeast and toward the southwest and just sort of stretching apart. So no real organization right now. And if anything, any of the thunderstorms that may develop later will probably be over in this area and heading toward the west, similar to what they did yesterday. As we go out into the Caribbean, you can see that really most of the Caribbean is really very nice, all the way out to the islands out here. Fairly fast trade winds at the surface, so and those trade winds are slowing down very quickly as they approach the Central America coast. When they slow down, they go up, and the rising motion produces the thunderstorm activity we see along the coast here. That's not expected to develop into anything the next 24 hours. Now we have a low pressure system out in here that's been very weak and hard to find off and on throughout the day with the observations we've got out there. Still some thunderstorms with it, more associated with convergence or confluence of two air masses that are forming those thunderstorms, and not too much to worry about right now. Now as we go off to the east coast here, we see this frontal boundary out here, an old frontal boundary out here. We see a low pressure system spinning around out there, and let's zoom in on that and see what we've got. Here's the low center right down in through here, and it's not developing much now, but it's remained fairly stationary the last 12 hours and is expected to do so the next 24 or so. We still have upper level winds out of the southwest which are unfavorable for development. So we're not expecting anything out of it right now. We'll have to keep an eye on it. Right now the winds around it are relatively light, only about 10 to 15 miles an hour. A little stronger winds up to the north in the thunderstorms, about 15 to 20 miles an hour. But no development is being observed right now, and most of the storm activity is north of the center, although we have had just a few showers pop up there, thunderstorm showers pop up the last 2 hours over that area. Now in the central Atlantic, we'd watch that large tropical wave as it moved across the Atlantic. It's not so large anymore, but it continues to move that toward the west at about 15 to 20 miles an hour. And it had been virtually thunderstorm free. Now as it's moving into a little more unstable environment toward the Caribbean islands, you're seeing a lot of thunderstorm flare up, and these will move into the northern Windward and Leeward Islands later this evening and into tomorrow morning, but no development is expected from that. Now far off of Africa, we had a tropical wave that's moved off the coast. There it is there. Not much development from it, just a continuous area of deep thunderstorms, and we're not expecting that to develop in the next 24 hours. Keep in mind though, be prepared, we're starting on that ramp up that in general for most years we see a rapid increase in tropical cyclone activity. Now in the eastern Pacific, we've had Hurricane Estelle, and it's now down to 85 miles per hour, still moving to the west-northwest away from the coast, and we can see the demise of Estelle slowly but steadily on the satellite imagery here as that deep cold cloud decreases in intensity. Now the only effect from Estelle we're going to have is surf along the coast from Baja on up to Southern California, and most of the swell that's generated from this has already been generated. It's already moving away from the coast. And keep in mind, surfers out there, to get the real big surf, we need one of these hurricanes moving toward Southern California or Baja or wherever your interest in waves is. So right now we're going to get about 8 to 10 foot surf there, maybe higher in some areas where we get the funneling, but in general that's about all we're going to get from Estelle. Now we do have a typhoon out in the western Pacific, Typhoon Otto. Here it is here, it's heading up toward Taiwan, and the forecast is to take it over southern to central Taiwan the next 24 hours as a hurricane of about 75 to 80 miles per hour, and then on into China the next 24 hours beyond that. So we're going to keep an eye on this as it comes through, but this is a fairly potent system. Right now it's not extreme wind hazard, but there's quite a bit of rain shower activity, and with this system we could typically expect quite a bit of rain, especially in the mountainous regions of Taiwan, and of course up that high in those higher mountain areas oftentimes we get some pretty good rains and higher winds in those altitudes. Well, stay tuned to the Weather Channel for more weather coming up.
Texas is still suffering with triple-digit temperatures. Find out if there's any relief in sight, plus a look at conditions nationwide on Weather Center after your local forecast.
To demonstrate the unique construction of a Simmons Beauty Rest pocketed coil.
I wonder what...
Thanks for joining us here at the Weather Channel. It's time now for Storm Watch, and we are in the Atlantic hurricane season, so that means we are looking at not only what is happening across the United States now in terms of stormy weather, but also scanning both the Atlantic and Pacific for potential tropical development that either now or in the future could perhaps impact you and your family or your friends and relatives. Let's start off with the tropical update, and we look at what is happening in the broad sense. We started off with the big picture. This is the entire Atlantic basin, and we do have a few areas that we will be watching. Now, of course, Tropical Storm Alex no more got torn apart by an upper level low. You can see that upper level low spinning right here farther to the north. Notice this right here. This is a front. This is the leading edge of the cooler Canadian air that pushed down and has been giving such delightful weather into the northeast and the southeast over the last day or two. But along that front, right here along around North Carolina, we do have a low pressure system. In fact, let's bring it in a little tighter here. And that low is in this area here. And the problem is that when you have a low that sits off the southeast coast this time of the year, remember the Gulf Stream runs right up in this area as well, very warm water. When a low pressure area sits out over the Gulf Stream for a while, it can transform itself. It can change from being a non-tropical low to a tropical low and then develop into a tropical depression. We saw it happen last year. Anna, Bill, Claudette, all formed off the southeastern coast of the United States, and we will be watching to see if this area of low pressure starts showing any signs of doing the same. So far, no. But as the longer it stays here, the more we will be watching this. Alex, gone. Just a swirl of clouds, a few storms. Here's that upper level low again. There is an area of disturbed weather here in the not too far from the Bahamas that we're also watching, but so far no development is evident. We've got the Caribbean and the Gulf very quiet, as a matter of fact. Really not much going on in either location. and that means that we won't be expecting development in either for the next 24 hours. We head out into the Atlantic where, here's the Leeward and Windward Islands. We've got a little disturbance working its way toward the islands, but as you can see, not much really with it. No real big areas of thunderstorms. This area of thunderstorms is a little too far south. Usually we don't see anything develop out of systems this far south. However, we do have another system that is coming off the coast of Africa, another tropical disturbance, hanging on to its thunderstorms pretty well here. We'll have to watch this as it progresses its way across the Atlantic to see if it causes any problems, if it develops any further. That upper level low I kept showing you, well, we depict that in our upper level winds right here. Notice the counterclockwise spiral in. We still have easterly winds across the tropical Atlantic. That's very unusual as we get into this time of the year, and that may mean we'll be seeing more activity coming across the Atlantic during this time. But once it runs into this upper level low, that's not a good area for hurricanes and tropical storms to maintain themselves. So this is acting as somewhat of a guard against development coming, storms coming up through this area. So we'll see if that maintains itself in this location. Those are two features we'll be watching for over the next several weeks, this low pressure trough here in the Atlantic and also the unusually easterly trade winds here across the upper level winds across the tropical Atlantic. We're heading to the tropical Pacific now, the eastern Pacific, as we look at the latest on Hurricane Estelle out of the National Hurricane Center, the advisory as of 8 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, taking the top winds down a notch to 80 miles an hour. The hurricane is tracking west at 16 miles an hour and centered about 1,150 miles west-southwest of Cabo San Lucas. It is starting to weaken, and it will continue to weaken. We're pretty much bringing it away from, you can see it's heading away from the Mexican coast. Let's take a quicker look here, a closer look rather, and notice that we still have a small core of high topped clouds here. That's that yellow and orange right here, but notice it is a very small core, and the storm is over cooler waters, the hurricane over cooler waters, and that means it will weaken further, and we expect this to be downgraded to a tropical storm here before too long as it continues to work its way down in top wind speeds. We also have Typhoon Otto here in the western Pacific getting ready to move ashore in southern Taiwan before crossing the Taiwan Straits and impacting on the Chinese coast, where flooding has been a problem in China, so that is something that we'll have to watch as we go through time. Back here in the United States, though, we're watching a very slow-moving storm system here in the center of the nation. Some strong storms possible across parts of the Midwest and reaching down into the Red River Valley. Here's what it looks like on the current map, the center in western Iowa right now. And you can see that circulation pretty much right around Sioux Falls. Close to there is the center of circulation. But farther to the south, we are seeing some showers going on in northern Kansas and north of Des Moines. And we do have a severe thunderstorm warning right now into areas just to the west of Ada, Oklahoma. So watch out for some showers in the Red River Valley. Coming up next, we'll take a look at the Pacific and Weather Center. Stay with us.
You could be suffering in hot and humid temperatures or basking in beautiful, cool and dry conditions. Get the highs and lows of your thermometer just ahead on Weather Center.
It starts here. It starts here. It also starts here and here.